From the MCADSV offices in Jefferson City, I'm Public Affairs Director Matthew Huffman, and this is Momentum, a webcast produced by your coalition to connect advocates across our state. In this episode, I'm going to be talking with our Operations Director, Zach Wilson. Zach, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
So in this episode, we are going to be talking about all things VOCA. I think VOCA is a topic that is really fresh on the minds of all the people at our member programs. It's a topic that folks are constantly calling here and asking TA questions about, doing really innovative things with. And so I think this is a really cool opportunity to take a closer look at how it's really impacted the state, as well as some of the really great work that our advocates have been able to do with this funding.
Definitely. VOCA has definitely transformed our state. There's new things that are happening all over, but I think its impact is still yet to be fully felt. I think there's more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to get us started, can you give us an overview of what is VOCA?
Okay. VOCA is the Victims of Crime Act. So this is a federal act that allows money from fees and fines of federal cases to go out to the states to support victims of crime. So that it can support services from local nonprofits, government agencies, and other providers that help work with those victims. VOCA has been part of our infrastructure for decades, but we saw significant increases in 2015, where we were finally able to increase the cap at the federal level of the money that was going out to the states. So in our state fiscal year of 2015, we had $9 million that was coming to the state. The next year, we saw $37 million, and that trend has continued. So we've had several different years of $37 million, $33 million, culminating in this last year of our current fiscal year that we're heading into of $60 plus million that's coming to our state.
That is an incredible increase.
It is an incredible increase, and it's allowed us to do a lot of incredible services, because also with that change in dollars also came the change in regulations. So unfortunately, the federal government sometimes doesn't move as fast as the world around it. So many of these providers that were out there using VOCA funds were using rules that were established in 1997. So while it was fantastic that the rules allowed us to buy a pager, that really wasn't the world that we were in anymore.
Yeah.
So now that we actually were able to move through those dollars and get them out to the states, we were able to start using the new regulations. So in May of 2015, we finally started receiving those actual dollars that were attached to the new regulations, and that opened up the world in some of the services that we were able to provide. Because this was a long time. It was 5 years of the field talking with the Office of Victims of Crime, really talking and informing them about the services, what changes needed to be occurred, what regulations were just not in step with how programs were going, and some of the new places that we wanted to go. So it was really, really exciting, some of the new stuff that came out. Those new regulations were picked up by our state agencies. Luckily, now that we're with the Department of Social Services, we have everything that's included inside the federal regulations. There are no additional state stipulations on the kinds of services. There's no restrictions on what is what's allowable. So whatever is allowable under the federal regulations is also allowable in Missouri. So that's fantastic. Some of the things that were just kind of new that I think are really allow us to serve people in a different way. It seems like such a basic thing, especially in our sector, but the new regulations actually allowed safety planning to be an allowable activity. That was something that was before that was incorporated in the work that we did and the advocacy that we did, but it finally kind of made mention of it in the regulations, and I think that kind of holds true to the whole scope of VOCA in that we're really putting the needs of survivors first, and safety planning is one of the first things that we need to do with people.
Yeah.
So having that be something that's not only allowable but outlined in the regs really allows us to see that client-centered, that survivor-centered focus in the program itself. New things that were added in there was allowing substance abuse treatment to be allowable. It was one thing that wasn't allowable. Now we can pay for both inpatient and outpatient services. It really expanded legal assistance. It used to be that basically all people could do was provide orders of protection, help people with that process, assist them and be with them in some advocacy and accompaniment and through legal services. But now that's expanded. Now we can go into family law. Now we can go into non-tort civil cases. We can do all of those different things. That really is the full spectrum of what survivors need in our communities. It's added transitional housing. It's added relocation expenses. It's just a full gambit on almost every service. It allows us to go much deeper and really see the needs that are there. And then now we're also able to work with different victims as well, too. There used to be a prohibition on working with incarcerated victims, even though that we know they're there and we know they need services, that is now gone. So we're able to, regardless of where someone is, if they're a victim of crime, we can work with them. Regardless of their immigration status, we can work with them. So it just really allows us to do all those different things. And that update from the 97 regs was really helpful for organizations.
I'm really glad that you gave those specific examples, too, because I think that helps to highlight that public policy advocacy is incredibly informed by the field of people doing the work. And so being able to update and change the regs and have them be in line with the current needs of survivors, and being able to hear from advocates in the field saying a basic tenet of our advocacy is being able to do safety planning, being able to recognize that survivors have multiple traumas and multiple needs, and that can be in multiple locations, just like for incarcerated individuals. Like you said, these are things that fall in line with the current reality of the work, and that's why it's so important that is part of our public policy advocacy too.
Yes, these two things had to happen hand in hand. If we received just the increase in funds and we didn't also get those changes in regulations, we would not be able to spend these dollars. We would have been limited in the scope of what we could do, and survivors would have been the ones that felt that. It would not have been us. It would have not been any of the federal agencies. It would have been the survivors that feel these things. But because of that, because those two things came hand in hand, what we are seeing is trends since that point of increases in services, increases in bed nights, increases in community presentations. So we're getting our word out there more. We're being able to serve more people. We're able to do more services for those people and get much more in depth. But we're also able to just build the community awareness about what's going on and trying to get ahead of some of these things. Now, while prevention is not allowable underneath VOCA, community awareness, outreach, education, all those things are, and we know those things help along the long way of changing social norms and changing some of the things that happens inside of our community. So if we're able to have all these things go, and some of those things were traditionally done with unrestricted funds, that allows us to open up those unrestricted funds to go into prevention, to go into some other areas that are a little bit more underfunded. Yeah,
absolutely. So again, another example of how it's really transformed the field of advocacy and education here in Missouri. Let's talk a little bit about current awards and what it kind of looks like in Missouri in this new landscape.
Yeah, so currently there's 120 different subrecipients that are receiving VOCA funds in our state. And so that's really exciting. That number has gone up, and I fully anticipate on this next round that we're going to see an increase in that number because new people are learning about it. We're getting more people involved. So I think we're going to see those funds go up. So I told you before, 5 years ago, we were receiving $9 million that was spread out over 2 years, and people were working with those services. Well, these 120 subrecipients, their total awards are over $78 million. It's $78 million of services, an average of about $650,000 per agency. So big agencies, small agencies, of course, receive different levels of funding, but we were able to scale up across the state.
Yeah.
But the reality is we're not done yet. A lot of people were moving forward and they were able to do these things, but we can't just go from 0 to 60 and expect everything to be going hunky-dory. You have to go in stages. And so we've done some surveys, and of course we've talked to members, and we have a lot of different interesting data that we're going to be able to talk over these next few minutes about. But one of the things that I think that stands out the most is that 87% of our respondents said they plan on doing an increased award. So not only did they already scale up majorly, they're anticipating doing it again. And luckily we have the funding, and hopefully the funding will keep coming through the federal budget. But 87% of the people out there aren't just resting where they are. They still see a need and they still want to move forward.
Which is fantastic because we know the need is there. And now, because of this increased funding, because of the no restrictions through the regulations, we can do that. We can now meet that need. And it's really incredible to see that having this increase in funding and fewer regulations allows people to dream big and to know we can meet the need in our community.
Yeah, and we're seeing across the board, I mean, we were able to finally scale up some of the salaries. So, unfortunately, as is the case in a lot of nonprofits, but I think it was a little bit more so at our DV and our SV programs, we just weren't able to pay people a livable wage as opposed to even a competitive wage. We were losing people to McDonald's, to Burger King, to Dairy Queen down the street, and you can't have all of the vicarious trauma that affects us, the work that we need, and just the dedicated individuals and advocates that you need. I mean, it is not enough for someone to continue doing the work just because of their passion and motivation. We've got to be able to support people. We've got to be able to pay them a lot, and VOCA allowed us to do that. But we still need more. We were only able to scale up some people. We were only able to move other people up, and the communities continue. Market rates continue to go up. So one of the major things of the people that said they are requesting additional funds is because they do want to pay their people more. They want to offer more benefits. They want to be able to pay them health insurance. They want to be able to pay them dental insurance. They want to be able to give them a wage to not only attract high talent people, also keep the fantastic advocates that we have, but to really compensate them for the work that they've done. We do not have to continue suffering and to show that we're good and righteous. We can pay people what they need to be paid and keep great people and still continue to recruit more as we expand. We're also seeing that there's going to be an increase in services. People are seeing the demand on the legal side of what's going on, and they want to fill that need. So whether it's contracting with attorneys to kind of just work directly with them so they can get a good attorney, train them up, have them know our work, and then pay them to consistently work, or we're seeing a lot of agencies bring these attorneys on staff, and that is just changing the landscape of some of our services.
Absolutely.
When you can just talk to someone, sit there, meet their immediate needs, get through safety planning, and then just in the same place they are right now, also meet with an attorney to go through the other stuff they need. There's just transformation that occurs in that.
Absolutely.
On the immigration side, elder abuse side, we're seeing a lot of different things. And then I think on the other side of the house as well, too, is we're seeing a lot of increases in therapy services. So we're seeing a lot of increases in mental health counselors, substance abuse counseling, because we just know those two things are co-occurring. And so being able to work with clients with all of their needs is just becoming really, really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing that I thought about as you were talking about this is just thinking about sustainability in general for our programs. And we know that programs are experiencing really high turnover, like you said. So how do we not only recruit, but retain staff who want to be here, who want to be part of the work, but who previously were working for an agency that were so undersourced, then that agency is constantly seeing that turnover too. And I think that that's also notable because we know that in the 124 member programs that we have in the roughly 20,000 workforce there, the majority are women.
Yes.
And so being able to bring in a huge workforce in Missouri of women to not only a livable but competitive wage doing really important social justice, social change work is another mark of transformation for Missouri. It's really incredible that not only can agencies do that, but expand their services and really widen their influence in the community in terms of how they can make a huge impact.
Yeah. In the VOCA Impact Survey that we did with member programs, we had 65% of them indicate that they increased staff. They added new staff, and then we also saw a significant number of them also increase wages. So we saw on an average about an 8% increase in wages, which sounds fantastic, especially when you think about a 3% cost of living adjustment.
Yeah.
But when you're starting at dirt levels and adding 8%, while that brings us up, it does not bring us up to market rate. So we're still not being competitive. And so I think this next round is really going to be beneficial for us, and then as we continue. But the key is that whenever we bring these new rates in and we're able to bring these new services in, we've got to sustain it. VOCA is becoming the backbone of victims of crime services in our state. So it's essential that that funding level stays where it is, if not continues to go up. Luckily, the funds are there to support it. The fees and fines that are coming at the federal level are still coming in. So we still see that the funds are there, and continue having them come out is going to be essential.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking a little bit more about the survey information, I know that we had 2 rounds of supplemental funds along with the increase in awards. So kind of talk about what people did with those awards, and then also what's the next step? What were some of the identified needs?
Yeah, so first of all, I would really like to say thank you and just express my sincere gratitude to the Department of Social Services for what they have done as our state administrating agency. They were able to not only move out a significant amount of dollars, but then as they went through their transition and as they were able to identify of like, hey, there's still some more needs and we have the ability to get some more dollars out the door, they didn't wait for the next grant cycle to happen. They didn't wait for 2019 to get funding out the door. What they did is they did supplemental awards in both 2017 and 2018. I mean, they let these dollars get out fast. So in the first round of supplemental funds, it was really about some one-time purchases that needed to occur. It was near the end of the fiscal year, so it was definitely something that had to happen quickly. But the department was very fluid in their response. They were there. They were very accessible, and when put out there, programs are very creative as well too. So we saw a lot of vehicles being purchased around the state, which was fantastic because what I have heard is the vehicles that got replaced were very much on their last legs, if even operating. Most of the time, it was staff members using their trucks or their vehicles to take care of these things. It was volunteers. It was churches. It was this other stuff. Now people have their own stuff because we know in our state, especially in our rural areas, transportation is a huge issue. So being able to give programs a resource that will work for them for years and solve one of these problems or just be part of the puzzle that solves it was instrumental in the success of these programs. I can't even go into how much these vehicles have really helped people.
Yeah, and that's something we hear in every region. We hear it every year. Transportation is one of the biggest barriers for survivors. So that is huge. That one-time purchase is transformational all on its own.
It definitely was. And then there was also a lot of equipment purchases that happened too. Nonprofits, being who they are, they sometimes have to take what is given to them. Mm-hmm. So often we get the handouts from our corporate partners of, the 5-year-old computer, the 10-year-old computer, the thing that doesn't really work, but we'll take it. These supplemental funds allow people to purchase the laptops they needed, give people mobile equipment, allow people to be able to do outreach in the field and not have to come back into the office. Really made us much more fluid of organizations and how we can respond. And then also just, paying for air conditioning and HVAC and the other things that actually make some of our shelters a place that someone can really heal. Mm-hmm. Not just be safe and secure, but give them the space, the ability to just heal as they need to. And having that stuff in there, it's critical. I mean, and what we've been able to do is some of our places, of course, the houses, we have a lot of donated houses, we have a lot of different shelters and a lot of different environments. We were able to repair and replace a lot of things that opened up some more beds, that made some rooms that were kind of unlivable now back to livable. So those kinds of one-time costs were really instrumental for us.
Yeah. And then I know that in the second round of supplemental awards, people were actually able to be much more innovative in the things that they were wanting to provide and start doing some of that planning for the future. So what were some of those things?
So the next round of supplemental awards was around client assistance funds. The department was really interested in what we could do on that side. So client assistance funds are a little bit different. So these are some direct payments, not to the client, but for the client. So things around, housing being, back rent, back utilities, needing those basic necessities of life, relocation costs, paying some of those actual things for them, dental care, medical care, when there's no other expense, they have no other access to funds. VOCA can be those funds of last resort. And so we decided to do a demonstration project. The department opened up about $1 million to roll out to the programs. We had about 24 agencies that were involved in it. So it was a good representation across the state. And everything from there I have heard of just amazing stories. And I'll talk about a few of them here. We had some survey responses. Well, I'll just be able to read the story straight off. But they were able to change individuals' lives for the first time. Mm-hmm. They were actually able to say yes. And that's the biggest thing I've seen from advocates, and the smiles I see on their faces when I talk about it, is their ability to say, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can get you into housing because we can pay those past 2 months that were back because your abuser didn't pay the bills. Mm-hmm. We can pay that. We can get you set off on the new foot. We can pay for job training. We can pay for education. We can pay for birth certificates. We can pay for those instrumental things you need to do to start over. And so it just was fantastic. And the stories that we've heard, sometimes they bring a tear to your eye. Most of the time, they just bring a huge smile to your face because they really were able to change people's lives. The thing that I thought was so cool about it as well, too, is now that we're kind of wrapping up that demonstration project and showing that, yeah, this is a viable way that we're going to go, and the department's completely on board with it and wants to move forward in the future with it, of how many other programs that weren't involved in it are gearing up to be ready. They were disappointed they didn't get into it in the first stage and are ready to go in the second. The ones that are in it and they've run through their money are reallocating current funds so that they can continue doing it until the new award comes in. So they've decided that this is such an important thing that we're going to hold off making this purchase, or we're going to hold off bringing in this staff person because I know I can get it on the next award, and I'm going to continue providing these services directly to the clients. So it just was amazing of what we've been able to do.
And that is really amazing because just the department's willingness to say, yes, we want to fund this. We want to fund this demonstration project to see how it can actually serve survivors. That project was able to really be this kind of incubator to show here are the really innovative things we can do as a state. It sparked other programs to want to do similar things. And again, it's just another really great example of how these funds have been transformative for our state.
Definitely. And just as like a story to kind of capture that, I was hearing from one of our programs about a family that they were working with. So their daughter was a sexual assault survivor, and the family was very committed to her healing. So committed that because their insurance didn't cover mental health counseling, that they couldn't find any other places to kind of get the services that she needed. They were going to go into debt. They were going to completely, essentially pay everything they needed to do, and they were at the risk. They stopped paying rent to pay this out of pocket. They stopped paying utilities so they could pay this out of pocket, and they were essentially going to almost become homeless because of their desire for their daughter to heal. They were able to get connected to a VOCA agency, start getting those things paid, and then actually getting the back bills paid for them, that they don't have to do that. They don't have to take away their college fund that they had been saving. They don't have to do any of that stuff. And their daughter can still receive the healing that she needed. It was just instrumental. And just when the relief that occurred and was explained to me through this advocate, that the family felt when they were actually able to access this level of support, not only helped in them coming more together as a family, it also started helping them identify some of the secondary trauma that the family had been experiencing, and just allowed them to breathe and do their own healing, because we know it affects the entire family. Mm-hmm. And they were able to not just focus on their daughter, but they were able to focus on everyone, and move their whole family to a new level of healing, which was it's just an amazing story.
Yeah, that is an amazing story. So kind of sticking with that, can you give a few more examples of local stories and the local impact that VOCA has had around Missouri?
Definitely. And this kind of comes straight from some of our survey responses. So one of our member programs talked about how, if it wasn't for VOCA, they wouldn't be in operations right now. Their shelter was literally falling apart. They had vehicles that were basically just parked in their parking lot because they couldn't work. They had minimal employees to cover a 9-county radius and still provide 24/7 services. Everyone was burnt out.
Yeah.
Everyone was not able to provide their best. They weren't able to provide the quality, effective services that they knew they wanted to. And it wasn't from a lack of trying. It was just from a lack of resources and just being over capacity.
Yeah, operating in scarcity.
Yep. VOCA came in and made things possible. They were able to fix the shelter. It was no longer falling apart. They were able to get working phones, working computers, a washer and dryer that actually worked. They no longer had to take residents down to the laundromat. They could keep them there and do it on site. They were able to overhaul their kitchen. They were able to take care of appliances, and they were actually able to get a complete overhaul in their bedding. So that allowed them to stop having the bed bug raids that continue to happen and go through that stuff. It had brought them into a place where they could come back and be fully present in the services that they were providing. They were able to, as they said, it brought us out of a dark place. And they wouldn't have been in operations. And I think it's just amazing to hear.
It really is.
I think at another programmatic level as well too is what's been happening with our services for deaf and hard of hearing individuals within our state. And this one is really the outstanding work that comes from our member agency, Deafleet, and the services that they've been able to provide. So they were able to partner with an IT company, Sorensen, and they were able to connect shelters across our state with a video conferencing line, so able to provide them with a free laptop, connect them to services, so that at any place in our state, if a person comes in that needs ASL interpreting, they're deaf or hard of hearing and need that kind of assistance and provide that crisis intervention as well, they're now connected and can do that right on the laptop, do it right through video conferencing. They're able to move across the state. So this is a statewide agency that really has a statewide reach now. And they're able to go as in-depth with different programs. And I know more programs are coming on board all the time. This is the kind of innovative programmatic thinking that I think has put Missouri as a leader in the nation, and this type of program can get replicated across the state. There is no need for somebody to come into one of our programs and not be able to reach services because they don't speak the language or because they're deaf or hard of hearing. We now have the funds to be able to support all those things so that we can have interpreters, we can have translation services, we can have everything that we need for individuals. It's really cool.
It is. It's amazing to think that because of these VOCA funds, this program was able to build an infrastructure for language access, for survivors to be able to access safety and services. And that is a really cool thing for us to think about as a state.
Yeah. And so we had kind of those agency responses and things that happened. And that's not even mentioning the floors that got fixed across our state. I don't know how many I'm just so surprised at how many rotting floors we had that people were continuing to work upon. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that we don't have people falling through every day.
Yeah.
That's done. The roofs that got fixed, the rooms that are now operational, the places that were abandoned wings of buildings that are now have families going through them, and the services that are providing. It's just amazing on just an infrastructure level what was able to accomplish in our state. Now, VOCA doesn't allow construction costs, so we didn't add a whole bunch of new beds, but it opens up dollars so people can start thinking about those kinds of things. It provides the operational costs for some of our agencies that have been able to expand services. I know down in the Southeast, we're going to have a brand new shelter opening up. VOCA is what allows individuals to put in the operations for that. Communities support those capital campaigns that allow people to grow, but we have to have funding that helps actually support the workers that are going to be there and the administrative and operational costs that go with that. VOCA is the backbone of that. We have other agencies that are now looking at expanding to another shelter because they know they have that operational cost. And so I think those are really, really exciting things that are coming. But again, we know people are going to be expanding out and continuing to grow bigger in 2019. So the availability of these VOCA funds are instrumental in our ability to grow. And we can't take steps back because we still have people that are unserved in our state. We still see those numbers every year, and we got to continue seeing how we can reduce those numbers.
So kind of following up on that, where do you see the future of VOCA for our state?
I definitely see VOCA expanding out. I see VOCA being something that comes into even more fruition in 2019. I think that agencies, as they should be, were cautious. I mean, you can't just come in and expand out services without a solid plan of knowing you can continue those services. So people wanted to move in incremental steps. I mean, they definitely made some giant leaps in some areas as well, too. And I think that a lot of people also just had to focus on their infrastructure. They had to focus on that. And now that that is done and we're able to kind of look to the future, I think 2019 is when we're going to see 19 and 20 is when we're going to see a huge expansion of services. We're going to see new programs. We're going to see things that were working in the northwest corner of our state being expanded across the state. We're going to see things that people are doing down in Springfield that are going to be happening up in Hannibal. I mean, we're going to see things going on across the state, and it's going to be really cool because our people talk to each other, right? Mm-hmm. We have regional meetings. We have the alliance that we build up. People are hearing the cool things. I think we're going to see a lot more lawyers inside our programs, and that's just completely exciting.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up, I wanted to end on a couple of the really positive success stories that we heard from programs. So could you maybe read us a few of those really exciting success stories?
Definitely. So I won't be able to act them out as well as I think the people who wrote these stories and really have the passion in it. So I'll try to give it justice, but. One of the stories that came from one of our member programs goes like this. As we know, when the victim decides to leave their abuser, the potential for increased aggression rises. This client experienced that increased aggression with a punch in the mouth that caused significant damage to her gums and teeth. She had no benefits, but she did seek consultation to see what was going on, and she knew that she needed 2 root canals, 2 crowns, and surgery for her gums, and she had no money to do this. She had no way to get these things taken care of. The client was devastated because she had no way to pay for them. But because of VOCA and because of what the agencies were able to do, they were able to negotiate not only a reduced rate from the dentist, but they were able to pay for that stuff through the VOCA Client Assistance Funds. She began improving and working towards her goals more than anything after her gum surgery. She has shown tremendous courage in standing up to her abuser and saying no more. And now she has a smile on her face every day. And she's truly living in a place of gratitude for the gift that she's been giving and the new life that she's about to go embark on. It's just really cool, some of the simple things, but just amazing things.
Yeah, but that is such an amazing example of how being able to have access to these funds completely changed an individual's life.
And then the same thing can be done. So we have that stuff kind of on like a personal, like more medical side. Same thing can be done with securing financial assistance to pay off thousands of dollars of debt and back utility and back rent. The program was able to advocate with a landlord to improve the leasing in the home so that despite her multiple evictions that were because of the abuser, that was off her record. They were able to pay those things that were on her name because, of course, he put all the bills on her name. He put the rent on her name and then didn't pay for it. So because of all that, they were able to do that. And then they were able to move their children who were continuing to have some behavioral issues, of course, that they needed continued services as well, too, because we know that the children are secondary victims in this as well. So because of all that, they were not only able to be at the shelter, they were able to find housing, and they're continuing to stay involved in non-residential services. So they were able to move them from their unsafe, horrendous place they were at into shelter to start healing, but then continue to provide those services because they're staying connected and able to get that rent covered for them.
And I really like that story too, because I think it's a nice juxtaposition with the first one. So being able to help a survivor with the immediate needs of dental care, and then in this story of being able to help a survivor in the immediate needs of safety for her and her family, but then also helping through those really long-term impacts of violence and helping provide safety and security and a new start.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to end on one last one because there's a lot of great ones, but this one I really, really enjoyed just because it gets some quotes from the client as well too, and you can just hear the impact that it's had. So a client shared with her therapist on how much receiving the VOCA Client Assistance Funds had really helped her finally get towards healing. The client shared how much of a relief it is knowing that the large expense was now off her shoulders and that it will no longer stop her from achieving her goal. The client intends to continue participating in outreach therapy and services and stated that she has found new motivation to keep going and continue her personal growth towards her self-healing goals. The therapist stated that she personally has seen a huge turnaround in the client's confidence now that she knows she can focus on those goals and not all the other things that were holding her down. And that is what VOCA allows us to do. That is what the creative, programmatic responses that our agencies are having, knowing that VOCA allows them to take some of those thoughts off their mind and think about the new things that they're going to do. So the thing that happened with this client also happens with the agency, and the thread that goes through it all is VOCA funding that's available.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure it stays available and continues coming to our state.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you were able to work with advocates to collect those stories, to be able to share those stories, and for us to be able to highlight them in this webcast and connect other people to these. Being able to share these stories and really share in the collective impact of how VOCA has become a backbone, as you've said, for victim assistance services, and also allow us to really transform what advocacy can look like in this state. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is.
And it's going to continue to be so.
That's right. Onward.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Zach.
Thank you, Matthew.